All right, George, we have one letter left on the board. This is all yours. It is a type of person. Let's finish this game of Wheel of Fortune! Ah, geez, a type of person. Huh. That's a tricky one. I don't know what that could possibly be. I got it. K. I'll take K. What is woken? Oh, that was so close. Actually, George, the word we were looking for was women. There's a plural form of women? You can have more than one of those? We have come a long way since Star Wars debuted in 1977 with A New Hope and the original trilogy that followed. I mean, in terms of representation alone, it's easy to see in these new movies that we are definitely a lot farther and better off, with, of course, room for improvement, than we were before. And what better time to talk about ladies than International Women's Month, which is March, by the way. It's easy to forget in the midst of all the hysteria in the media and the news outlets and the political debates, but it is International Women's Month, and it's a good time to talk about the fact that we have come a long way in Star Wars. If this video is the kind of video that's going to make you mad because you feel the need to comment that it doesn't matter and it's just good stories that matter and it's just not relevant whether or not there's male, female, or whatever else on screen, I don't know if this is the video for you. I think you'd be wasting your breath commenting if you're just going to be upset about it. So just carry on then. But if you are here to talk about, or see me talk about how great some of these ladies are, then welcome to the party.
Are you an angel?
I am sticking to canon characters right now. Not that characters like Mara Jade don't mean a lot to me, and not that they weren't any less important. In fact, that was a lot of the continuation and inclusion of more women in Star Wars in Legends.
I don't know who you are or where you came from, but from now on, you do as I tell you, okay?
I like to make fun of George Lucas for only having one woman in the entire galaxy. Hey, that is Emperor and Mon Mothma erasure, and you know it. Because really, it is just Leia for the most part in the original trilogy, and it's kind of hard to believe considering you see all these other creatures and a lot of other characters. There's a ton of characters in Star Wars. It's hard to believe that it's just her lingering about, and of all the women in the galaxy, she is Luke's sister. But we have, of course, come to accept and evolve with that storyline. But I gotta give George credit, because for the millionth time of me being on this earth, I feel like it's need to be said that Leia is what a way to start. She revolutionized female characters in so many ways. Her and Ellen Ripley from Alien are probably the first examples of this strong, tough, badass female character that we've kind of come to see a lot more of in media, and that's all influence of Princess Leia, because so many people love that type of character now. The fact that she's her own person, and she's strong, and she's witty, and she's the one who rescues the boys. They might try to rescue her, but she's the one who follows through, and she finishes the plan.
It's on rescue! You came in here, did you have a plan for getting out?
Eat the brains, sweetheart!
She spits in Tarkin and Darth Vader's face when her planet is being dangled in front of her. And her primary goal throughout all of this, regardless of what the situation is, whether it be in the original trilogy, the sequels, comics, TV shows, the primary goal is to fight for what's right. And she just is a constant champion of that. And she just pushes forward. She leans towards the light every single time, even though she has her angrier tendencies, much like her father. But she is tough as nails, both internally and externally, and we've come to see that more now, because now that we know she's a Jedi Master. I mean, she always was in Legends time, but now is canon that was the case, because she should be. She's strong with the Force, and we learned that in the original trilogy. One of the things about Leia that is just so epic is that it really did paint the picture of a new kind of female character. Because before her and before Ellen Ripley and stuff, it was mostly female characters that were like the love interest, and if they weren't the love interest, they were softer and more feminine, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having those types of characters on screen, but seeing different people, different types of people, is always a good thing. And in Leia's case, it really gave female characters a lot of agency after that, and it really just propelled the movement after that. I mean, it's not perfect. The whole no bras in space thing was a thing. And then, of course, there's Slave Leia, which the biggest controversy about Slave Leia not is so much the fact that she's like a galactic pinup, which, yeah, okay, that was obviously in there for a reason, but the fact that, you know, she doesn't talk during that whole scene, and that was Carrie Fisher's big problem with it too. And if there's one thing Leia definitely influences is the fact that romance can be different as well. She still gets the guy in the end, you know, but it's a whole different dynamic. She doesn't submit to him. She doesn't just roll over at whatever he says. She fights back, and it's kind of the reason I think Han Solo likes her a lot more, you know? I think he likes the fact that she's got spunk. I could talk about Leia till I'm blue in the face. This literally could be a Leia video, but we've got so many other ladies to talk about, thank God, because when I was a kid, it was between Leia, Mon Mothma, and Padme. And Aunt Beru. Speaking about Mon Mothma, she was the second female character in Star Wars, aside from Aunt Beru, as well as those slave girls in Jabba's palace. We know, can't forget about them. I don't know if it counts if they don't have any kind of dialogue on screen beyond just their shrill screams. But Mon Mothma was cool to see in Star Wars. She definitely gets a little bit more fleshed out among other pieces of media. She appears in a Revenge of the Sith deleted scene as well as in Rogue One, and they actually use the same actress from that Revenge of the Sith deleted scene, which was really cool to see consistency-wise. Mon Mothma also appears in shows like Star Wars Rebels as well as the Clone Wars. And it's good to see that she kind of makes her reach. She is the mother of the rebellion. She is the most at the forefront of Palpatine's wrath. Like, Palpatine hates her so much. She's just such a nuisance. She appears in Queen's Shadow. Padme looks up to her so much. And it's really cool that she takes Padme under her wing, and then she obviously takes Leia under her wing later. And that's just female solidarity, my guys. I just love to see it. We're always a fan of it. And she becomes the Chancellor of the Republic. Of course, that doesn't go too well, as we learn. We don't really know all the pretty details about that, but it's still cool that, you know, at least the galaxy had a female Chancellor, because, you know, Lord knows America's not there.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
And it really wasn't, because it's just Padme and Aunt Beru. A little bit of Aunt Beru, okay? Not that much. So calm down. Don't forget about Yaddle and her 17 seconds of screen time. And there's something about the way that Padme, like Leia, always puts the good above her own needs and her own wants. And she's another example of a very strong female character. The thing about Padme is that when you're watching the prequels, you do sort of feel, yeah, that could be Leia's mom, you know? And I think that's the important thing that we're here to sell. I think that her character gets a lot better in the Clone Wars. We see so much more of her. The thing with Padme's story that I think is the most poetic and also tragic at the same time is we know how it ends, you know, like in the prequels, you know that their mom is somewhere, she's gone, she's not on the scene, so we know something bad happens to her because of the original trilogy. Context clues, my guys. And the thing that's really sad about her is that we're watching and we know that something bad is going to happen to her. But she kind of knows too, even towards the end, like when everything is happening, when the whole galaxy is falling apart, she's still pushing for the good, and she still pushes for the good in Anakin. And I think that's where Luke gets that from. Luke gets that ease, to that ability to see the kindness in other people from Padme. Leia gets the determination and the absolute, like the grit, the gall. Leia gets that from her. And then one book I totally recommend if you're interested in learning and seeing more about Padme is Queen's Shadow, which I referenced earlier. It just builds so much of her relationship with her handmaidens, with her security guards, with just her overall, like with Bail Organa and Mon Mothma and just other people she meets along her journey to sort of find herself. Because as a young queen, she's identified as the queen, and she has these two different identities. It's like Padme Naberrie, which is her actual birth given last name, and then Padme, and then Amidala is this you know, that's who she acts like. And then we get to kind of see how she merges those two together and how they are both important facets of her life. And of course, Shmi Skywalker. She's the mother of Anakin Skywalker. She's kind, she's sympathetic, she's motherly. She's like the only mom we see in Star Wars that gets to actually spend an inkling of a second with her kid, except for Hera Syndulla now, but we'll talk about Hera later. I like Shmi. I think that she, you know, is one of those characters. Yeah, she was killed for Anakin's man pain, but, you know, like, join the club, I guess. Everybody else was too. But Shmi Skywalker, kind, sweet, sweet, sweet lady. And now the rest of this video is going to be about Yaddle. There's plenty of other female characters in the prequels that are very, very much in the background, but they don't really get their chance in the limelight until the Clone Wars.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
This is even pre-Disney, but with animation and with this universe, I think we were starting to finally see more characters. When I was growing up, it was just the aforementioned characters that you could potentially get an action figure of or potentially get a t-shirt of. And I always chose Leia. Like, that was a good choice. But, having a little more variety was always kind of a nice idea. But it was really nice that in the Clone Wars, a lot of these female Jedi that we did not really see or talk about in the prequels, they got their moment in the sun. Ayla Secura, Shakti, Luminara Unduli, Barriss Offee, Jocasta Nu. These characters that, didn't really get much being fleshed out, they all got that later, especially characters like Luminara, who eventually gets used as a big piece of pain later on in Rebels. Felt a little vindicated, as like a 12-year-old dressed like Ayla Secura, for her to have this really awesome arc with Anakin and Ahsoka. And speaking of Ahsoka, she was really the first female character in canon, in like any kind of animation, seeing it in action, who put a lightsaber in a woman's hand. I mean, she's a young girl. A lot of people were very controversial about Ahsoka. They didn't know how they felt about her. Now she's a mainstay. And I think that is just so telling. She just grows. It's about the growth with Ahsoka. It's definitely a journey. You go from her being this petulant, impulsive kid, I mean, we know what that's like at Anakin Skywalker, and growing up to be this like super calm, serene, and just like all-knowing woman. Like in Rebels, we see her, like the Ahsoka we see in Rebels is just so awesome, and she has one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars ever. And I think her arc just is a very important one, because it's like how the Jedi failed her, but how she grew to be something else, and she truly rose from the ashes. Ahsoka was one of those awesome characters because everybody was like, yeah, she's gonna die, it's gonna be really sad, the ending's gonna be terrible. Don't get me wrong, the ending was still very, very, very sad, but it wasn't really the ending, because now we're back to getting a new ending, and that's probably gonna hurt really bad too. And seeing Ahsoka, the fact that she just can't die, it's amazing. Like, she just keeps popping up. Dave Filoni's like, mine. She's not going anywhere. And I really appreciate that. She shows up all Gandalf style in Rebels, and it's
Shall not pass!
awesome. And the next animated show, you just like hear it now, it's going to be about Ahsoka. Like, Dave Filoni cannot resist throwing her into something. She's either popping up in The Mandalorian or something, or she's going to be in like some kind of animated show. It's happening. It's happening. If any character deserves to make it to live action, it's Ahsoka, because she is the big original character from the Clone Wars, and she changed the scene. She really did. She's super cool, and I love her so much. She's my second favorite Star Wars character ever, second to Leia. And on the flip side, our first real female villain, Ventress. Another character that just has an amazing glow up and just a total change over the course of the show. I mean, Ventress's story kind of falls a little through the cracks. Like, we're not really going to get it in season 7 of the Clone Wars, unfortunately, but it does get picked up in Dark Disciple, which is an amazing book that you should read. It's about her kind of figuring out that she doesn't need somebody to be strong. She doesn't need someone to define her strength for her. She has to come up with that on her own. She becomes a bounty hunter, and then she's kind of like, I'm low-key a mercenary. And, she has to find the light again. And I think that's something, she's such a tortured soul. And she starts out as a true villain, like there's something very menacing about her. And like, she doesn't seem very warm and fuzzy. Like, there's nothing about her where you're like, oh yeah, that's a kind, good woman. But she grows into something, and it's definitely kind of like kissing her wounds and everything like that, and just a lot to grow from. It's cool to see female characters be villains too, because I think that's just as important as seeing them be heroes. Satine. This is a nice touch point of pain. Satine has definitely grown to be one of my favorite characters as of recently, especially her relationship with Obi-Wan. I think Satine, the biggest thing about her, not to tie her to a man, because one of the best things about Satine is how independent she is and how solid she is in her beliefs. And even if she's wrong, she's very, she's stubborn, and it's okay for these people to have flaws, and she definitely has them, but she's very likable. I think she's a little stiff in the beginning, but then she's a very good yin to Obi-Wan Kenobi's yang.
I'm still not sure about the beard.
Why? What's wrong with it?
It hides too much of your handsome face.
Like, they definitely have a good rapport together. And then a relationship she develops with Padme, friendship-wise, is nice to see, too. That they're both low-key the girlfriends of these Jedi, and they're both politicians. And Satine, I think, is one of those characters that she's, her own person. She's her own character. She's cool. She introduces us to the Mandalorian culture way before we had any live-action stuff or any Baby Yoda or anything. And we have her to thank. But also, her inclusion into canon changes Obi-Wan Kenobi as a character and how we perceive him. The formerly totally perfect Jedi, he's wandered from the path. I mean, we don't know how in depth their relationship was when they were younger and everything, when they were like late teenagers, early 20s, when they spent a year on Mandalore together. It's insinuated that it was like a relationship, but it also is, it could go either way. I really want to see that story between the two of them and to learn more about Satine and her time as Duchess. She pretty much had to watch all of her people die and pick up from the ashes, and she develops this intense pacifism, which in Star Wars, that's interesting to see. On the topic of Satine, we've got Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan is Satine's sister. That is like a quick reveal in the Clone Wars, and they really don't have any scenes together. They are on opposite sides of the coin. Bo-Katan is bloodthirsty, low-key. When in reality, she grows too. We don't really get to see that development as much. We kind of see Bo go from low-key being part of a terrorist group, and then when we see her in Rebels, she's fighting the good fight. So what happens with her and her sister, I think that greatly changes her perspective on things, and if they worked together, I don't think what happens with Mandalore would have happened with Mandalore. It just goes to show that collaboration is a big deal. But Bo-Katan becomes the Mandalore, which if you haven't seen my Mandalorian video, you should. But she is the one who waves the Darksaber in the end, so she kind of leads them all. She's not the Duchess, but she is like their warrior, clan leader. But I think she chooses to honor Satine more in the end. The Witches of Dathomir. Speaking of bad Star Wars women, woo! Woo! Talk about not knowing what side of the coin they're on. Mama Talza, she really, she messes with everybody.
You're afraid that you will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
Disney Age is the one where we got the influx of all these female characters. Rey, for one thing. Rey in The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. First live-action female Jedi that we had that was the major character, that was the character. Whatever you think of with the sequel trilogy, Rey being there and being front and center is a big deal. I like Rey. I think in The Force Awakens, she had a lot of promise. She was this quiet and sympathetic and loyal character that was just had so much internal suffering and had so much light. She chooses to be good. And I think that the characters that choose good over bad every single time are the ones that really display their strength, despite of what her parentage, weird stuff that we know now. Rey is a really cool character who is pretty badass. She should have had a double-bladed lightsaber, but that's just me. I don't know, But the fact that she's here, and I want to learn more about her, because I think that for as much in the sequel trilogy as we see of her, I don't think we quite learn how she works and what makes her so different and what makes her so special beyond the fact of her parentage, because people are more than that, Jyn Erso, the only female character in Rogue One, except for Mon Mothma. And I think Jyn is one of those characters that people forget about when they think about female characters in Star Wars. Felicity Jones is an amazing actress. She's like nominated for Academy Awards all the time. She's in a lot of movies where you're like, that's going to be nominated for an Academy Award even before you see it. She's pretty badass. And in this movie, Jyn is kind of the least strong character. Like everybody else, the guys who surround her have a lot of personality, and Jyn is awesome. She's cool. She does her thing. I don't really think that she brings that much to the table beyond her familial connections, but she's the one who doubts herself, and she's kind of the hesitant hero, which, like Rey does that too, and it's one of those things where it's like, wow, okay, so it's the hero's journey. And with Jyn, it's all about the sacrifice and learning to care. And I think in a political atmosphere that we are in now, I think that's relevant. Maz Kanata, do not forget about her. Her eyes may look a little like buttholes when she takes the goggles off, but she knows the Force, and she's old as hell. I don't know how we haven't heard of her before, but Maz introduces a very interesting perspective on the Force, in that she doesn't have the Force, but she's like an architect of it, in a sense. Captain Phasma, the Boba Fett of female characters. But Captain Phasma is just They didn't use her enough in The Force Awakens, and then they brought her back in The Last Jedi and said, let's screw that up again. Kira, I'm surprised I liked her. That's all I can say. Her ending, though, in Solo was arguably the best part about it. Holdo, my friend Lindsay loves Holdo. I don't really know what else to say beyond the fact that people need to stop hating on her so much. I think that she offers a very strong presence. You know, her and Leia being best friends is really cool to see. And how she's the Luna Lovegood of Star Wars. Rose Tico. I like Rose. I think her character in The Last Jedi is used the wrong way. I would have loved more focus on her and her sister instead of going to a casino. Zori, a Power Ranger. Kind of didn't need to be there, but you know what? We'll take the crumbs we can get. I liked Janna better as far as inclusion characters of The Rise of Skywalker. I think that was a better inclusion because it brought more of what Finn was thinking and feeling into the sphere of things, and the fact that Janna is also a runaway rogue stormtrooper is super, super cool. And I'd read more about Janna. I'd read more about Rose too. I am absolutely fascinated about where extended canon can take them. It's just a disappointment that we don't quite get as much of them in the live action stuff, but you know, who's to say what the future holds. And our Rebels queens, Hera and Sabine. Hera is my favorite character in all of Star Wars Rebels. I mean, like, aside for Ahsoka, obviously, but original character in Star Wars Rebels, she is like the only one who gets a legitimate relationship with a Jedi where like he acts like he cares about her. In fact, like, Hera is the one who is the hesitant one in the relationship, and like obviously it's the Jedi normally that has to be like, oh no, I have to be quiet about my relationship with you. I mean, Anakin is very obvious, but like neither Anakin or Padme really resist it once it gets going. Hera is amazing. She is the space mom of the Ghost Crew. She like mothers all these people while simultaneously being like the coolest person ever. One of my favorite episodes of Rebels is when she straight up blows up an entire Star Cruiser just because they have Chopper, or they abused Chopper, which is her droid. And I'm like,
yeah, well maybe we should give it to them. They want to mess with my droid, they're gonna pay for it.
And she has the same zest for the rebellion as Leia does. She's on the ground a little bit more, but she is amazing. I love Hera. The journey she goes through is super tragic but amazing, and just I want to see more of her, please. Same with Sabine. You know, Sabine is awesome. She is a Mandalorian. That's another connection. She needs to be in the Mandalorian. I think of any character who makes the most sense to appear in the Mandalorian, it's Sabine. And this isn't even including book characters like Kaden Liarte or Erica Quell from Alphabet Squadron and Ahsoka, the novel, or it's not even including Dr. Aphra from the comics. There's just so many characters that pop up all over canon, and it's so cool to see. I feel absolutely vindicated as a young Star Wars fan when I was 7 years old, and I just wanted more, you know? I love good stories. That is first and foremost the thing. But you should be able to tell that while having a lot of different people. Who's your favorite female character, guys? Let me know in the comments below, and may the Force be with you. Have a great day.